morning. How are you all this morning? All right. I got to get a little bit better. All right, this morning's reading is from the book of Luke, 17, verses 5 through 10. And the apostle said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your servant, who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you not rather him prepare supper for me? Put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink. Later you may eat and drink. Do you thank the servant for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless servants. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" These are the words of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Pete. Another Hallmark card. I'll just look at you confused. What's this all about? This morning when you walked in, you were handed a mustard seed. Do you all have it? If you lose it, don't worry, we can give you another one. But hold it in your hand for a moment and really look at it. If I see you looking at me, I know you're not looking at it. You may have to squint because it's so small. It's almost invisible. You could drop it on the carpet and never find it again. And yet, Jesus sounds like a dad sometimes. He says, if you had the faith the size of this seed, you could tell a mulberry tree to uproot itself and plant in the sea, and it would obey. That's a shocking claim. I'm going to go try it later. A seed so small, a tree so deeply rooted, an ocean so vast, and Jesus insists that somehow faith bridges all three. Is Jesus talking about gardening? He was a carpenter, right? I didn't see where he was a gardener. He's not being literal here. He's talking about the life of the soul. He's talking about what faith is, what faith does, and how it moves in us. So as we hear this text together today, I want you to not only listen, but hold the seed in your hand and let it preach to you. Seeds preach sometimes. So the apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith. Give me more." It's one of the most honest prayers in Scripture. These were not new recruits. These were not the beginners. These were the people who had left their homes, who had followed Jesus across dusty roads and crowded villages, who had watched him heal broken bodies, calm raging storms. Ever see the show The Chosen? Jesus is doing a lot of cool stuff. They'd walk so close to him, they tasted all his miracles, and still they feel empty. Isn't that the human condition? Yesterday's bread never seems enough for today's hunger. Yesterday's courage never seems enough for today's challenge. Faith, like manna in the Bible, cannot be stored up. We have to wake up each day and go out and get the measure we need. So I wonder how many of you have prayed that same prayer, "Increase my faith." Maybe you prayed it when the chemo dragged on and you were so tired you couldn't make another appointment. Maybe you prayed it when your marriage felt so brittle that the spark had gone cold. Maybe you prayed it when your child was far away, whether physically or emotionally, and you couldn't bridge the distance. Maybe you prayed it when you scrolled the news this week and felt like the world was unraveling faster than it could be stitched back together. That prayer, "Increase my faith," doesn't come from winning. It's not from triumph. It comes from desperation. And let me tell you, as a Mets fan, I know something about desperate prayers. Today is the day. So what does Jesus say when the disciples beg for more? You'd expect him to encourage them, to pour in a little extra strength Tylenol, faith, to top off their tanks. But that's not what he says. He doesn't, all who are weary come to me. He says that to the beginners. But to the advanced, to the recruits, to his disciples, he says this: if you had faith, look at it again, the size of the mustard seed in your hand, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. He doesn't give them more. He tells them they already have enough. Weirdly, I used to live on a mulberry street in Stamford, so I know about mulberries for some reason. So why does he choose a mulberry tree? Because back then, everybody knew the reputation of a mulberry tree. The mulberry tree has roots that spread wide and deep, roots that tangle like a web, roots that clung to the earth with stubborn determination. They're very hard to pull out. People say they can last 600 years. Try to dig one up yourself, and you'll find yourself wrestling with a labyrinth beneath the soil. Once planted, it was practically immovable. And that made it the perfect image for the parts of life in us that feel impossible to budge. And isn't that where we need faith the most? We all have mulberry roots in our soul. There are old resentments that we thought were buried, but somehow still sprout back up when we least expect it. Go to Thanksgiving and tell me about it. There are griefs that linger long after the funeral, long after the world has moved on. There are addictions people wrestle with, thinking our willpower will be enough, only to discover that the roots run much deeper than we imagined. There are family wounds that get passed down like an unwanted inheritance, patterns of silence or shame that repeat across generations. There are fears that freeze us before we even begin. Psychoanalysis calls these complexes, emotional knots in the psyche that pull us without our consent. Jesus, the first psychoanalyst, called them mulberry roots. You can cut them back on the surface, but they continue to draw nourishment from underground. And so Jesus has the audacity, the boldness to say, even faith the size of a mustard seed can move those mulberry trees out of your soul. You get rid of those complexes. Not because you're strong, but because faith is alive and has a certain power. A seed may look like nothing. Look at it. It looks like nothing. But inside that seed, you don't see it. It's pulsing with life. Pulsing with life. It pulsing with life so strong, it can bust through the cracks of that cement. Just give it some time. Faith is not about quantity. It's about the quality. It's not about the size. It's about the nature of your faith. But why mustard? Not because it's sweet or beautiful. In Jesus' day, they didn't have Hebrew National, and you couldn't get a hot dog with mustard on it. They probably wouldn't eat those hot dogs back then. Mustard was a weed. Farmers cursed it. When I was in Israel, my professor, he held up a mustard weed, and he said, just doing this would scare everybody out of their minds, because they would be afraid it would blow out of my hand and into their garden. Farmers cursed it. Rabbis, imagine me saying, whatever you do this week, don't plant mustard. Rabbis would discourage people from planting it. Mustard was invasive. Once it got into your garden, it spread. It took over. It crawled into the cracks. It climbed over the walls and claimed ground you didn't intend to give it. So when Jesus says faith is like a mustard seed, his disciples are not like, oh, that's so cute and sweet. They heard, what? Faith is wild and stubborn and invasive? Faith doesn't sit politely in the corner? Faith will creep into every hidden place? It grows where you didn't plant it? It pushes into your habits, your comforts, your plans. It disrupts. Maybe that's why sometimes we try to keep God at a distance. I do too at times. I was so sick and miserable, I didn't want to be nice or happy this week. I tried to keep God at bay. Because we know deep down, faith will not let us stay tidy. Faith will give us hope when we'd rather resign ourselves. Don't you hate that? Faith will stir us to move when we'd rather sit still. Faith will keep us going when we'd rather quit. Despair, for all its misery, sometimes feels safer and more familiar, more comfortable. But faith is dangerous because faith changes us. Faith is invasive, stubborn, and disruptive. And yet Jesus does not stop with the image of the weed and the tree. Let's make this even more confusing. He shifts to another picture, one that sounds harsh to modern ears. He tells the story about a servant. Servant's out in the field working all day. The servant comes in at night, and the master doesn't say, sit down, you deserve a break. The master says, all right, go get my dinner. Serve me first, then you get to eat. Is that from Jesus? It sounds jarring to us, but the lesson is simple. Faith is not about recognition or reward. Faith is steady, humble service. It's daily showing up. It's the task done quietly without applause. So faith is both. It's wild like a weed, spreading into every hidden corner of your life, and it's steady like a servant, showing up day after day. Both matter. And this is where it comes close to home. Because the truth is, most of us are already practicing mustard seed faith in ways you hardly notice. I mean, look at your hand, it's hard to notice. Faith is the mother who whispers prayers over their kids at night when they're exhausted. Faith is the nurse who stays past her shift to help the patient 15 minutes longer. Faith is the teacher who keeps showing up even when the classroom feels impossible. Faith is the widow who still comes to church even though the pews feel empty. Faith is the neighbor who keeps bringing you soup when illness comes even when life is already busy. Faith is forgiving somebody when resentment would be easier. Faith is singing. I sang on my way to church this morning. Faith is singing when your heart is heavy. Faith is saying, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but God will be there, so I'll be okay. None of these will be on your TikTok headline reels. None of these things that we do will be remembered by the world. But they are mustard seeds. They may look small, but they are alive. And faith, when it's alive, has a way of spreading beyond anything we ever imagined. Faith also accumulates. Think about time. Think about it. If you worship, say you miss 3 times, 5 times a year, right? You've come like 45 plus years, 45 plus hours a week to church. That's a good amount. Add a Bible study, a council meeting, a committee meeting, that's another 50. Add daily prayer service, acts of kindness, and you're looking at hundreds of hours. Stretch that over 10 years, and suddenly you have thousands of hours, thousands of mustard seeds. That's how faith grows, not in leaps, but in this slow accumulation. Investors know this. Nobody learns piano by one practice, and nobody becomes an athlete by one workout session. It's the daily reps, the daily showing up. Faith works the same way. Small, ordinary acts repeated over time shape us into people who trust God more than ourselves. And that's why Jesus's words matter so much. Because if faith really is like mustard, then the question is not how much do you have? The question is, will you let the faith that you already have live? Will you trust that even a tiny seed that is alive in you can spread to all parts of your life? So before we leave, let's look at that seed in your hand again. It's small. It's fragile. It would be easy to lose. And yet there's life inside of it. Inside is potential. Inside is power. Take it home. See how long you can hold on to it. Put it somewhere you'll see it. On your nightstand, your desk. Tape it to your mirror. Put it in your wallet. Let it preach to you this week. Let it whisper that God has put eternity in your heart already. You don't need more. You don't need bigger. You only need to tend what you already have been given. And when you see it, remember, faith is alive. Faith spreads. It disrupts. It endures. It may feel small. It may look insignificant, but it is absolutely enough. Because when faith takes root, it's not your life being lost. It's your life finally being found. Amen.